What's up, guys? Corey J here. What I'm going to try to do today is a tag video for the community. If I want to start one up, and hopefully some people will do a video of this, because I'm really interested in seeing what people have as far as what I've got here. So what the subject is, and I got this idea from watching Fred Hall Direct Edition's latest video. And he was talking about a comic he picked up. It was Cloak and Dagger 19 that he picked up because it was a book that he had from his childhood. And you know, of course, monetarily it's not worth anything, but you know, sentimentally it's worth a lot. And I think a lot of us, you know, we may not have started the actual collection part when we were kids, but we did have comic books when we were a kid. You know, we were drawn in by the TV shows or cartoons. And for me, it was the Incredible Hulk TV show, which would scare the crap out of me whenever Bruce, or David Banner, if you will, would turn into the Hulk. And it was just so scary to me, but I loved it. And then the Incredible Hulk cartoon, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon that was on Saturday mornings with Iceman and Firestar. Those were, you know, things that brought me into superheroes. I loved the superpowers, super friends, whatever they wanted. You know, at this point they were called the superpowers. I remember that's the toys that were out, the little toys that they made. And so I was big into Superman and Batman and Robin. I remember watching the Scooby-Doos with Batman and Robin in them, and we just fell in love with superheroes. So comic books was just something natural to get into. So what I'd like is, what I'm going to show you here is books that I had from my childhood. And now these aren't exactly the books. Now some of these are books I actually had. Like, they are from then. Like, I had them and still continue to hold them from my childhood. And some of these are replacement books that I got recently or in the last couple of years because I wanted to go out and find them because I remember having them as a child. So what I'd like to see is if, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tag everyone in the community. This is an open tag. So anyone that wants to participate, please participate. I love to see your childhood comics. And you don't have to get every one of them out. Just get a stack. I got a handful here of some books that, you know, kind of mean something to me from my childhood. And it could be the actual books that you have or a replacement book that you've got. And, you know, maybe a little backstory, you know, to some of these books, or, you know, how you got into comics or superheroes in general. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And just like I said something about superheroes, getting into superheroes, I was a huge Star Wars fan. I remember watching the Star Wars movie on TV. You know, it would play, I'm sure, you know, of course I had antennas, bunny ears, whatever you want to call them. So I didn't have cable. And I would watch, you know, the original Star Wars. And I remember going to the drive-in and seeing Return of the Jedi. And for some reason in my memory, I think they overdubbed Jabba the Hutt speaking. I think they overdubbed him where he was actually speaking English. So I don't know if the words were too small to read on the screen. That's my memory. I don't know if that actually happened or what, but I can just remember because I couldn't read, you know, and at 4 years old I couldn't really read. So watching that on the, you know, at the drive-in, I remember Jabba the Hutt actually speaking English. So anyways, I got these Return of the Jedi books. These are not the actual ones that I have. I had to go back and get these about a year or so ago. But I had these as a kid, and I remember going over these from beginning to end over and over and over. And I would play out the scenes from the movie and the comic book in live action with myself and, you know, imaginary characters. You know, I would do the Sarlacc pit part where Luke is dangling off of off of the little barge or whatever, the sail barge. He's hanging off of it, and he flips back up and gets his lightsaber. I would do that. Well, not exactly that, but I would pretend to do that off of the back of a pickup truck with the gate down. I was hanging onto that. Of course, my feet were touching the ground, but that's the kind of imagination and things you would do as a kid, you know, especially back then when you didn't have as many forms of entertainment. You had to entertain yourself. But I got these books, and I want to say that I got them at Walmart in a pack. Now, this was before Walmart started carrying actual comics and doing the Walmart packs that they started around the early 90s. But this, I want to say that I got it from Walmart. And it was a pack of 4, and I looked over these things constantly. And whatever I could read, any words that I could, I remember reading. And I looked, when I got these last year, I went back and started looking over them. And it just triggered, you know, things in my head about these comics. You know, I could remember some of these scenes from this comic book, and it just really was just, I don't know, it just took you back. Nothing's better than going back to when you was a kid and where things were innocent, you know, just everything, you know, you had all the time in the world, you know, everything was slow, everything, you know, you didn't have to worry about bills and life and jobs and things like that. And it's just such a simple time when we were kids. And we, you know, of course, as you're a kid, you don't know not to take it for granted, but you can always look back and cherish those memories. And these are the books that helped me. And these may have been my actual first comic books. I can't remember. All right, now I had this one, The Man of Steel #1. This is not the actual book that I had, but I remember this. As I had this when I was about 6, and I remember looking it over and over. And at this point, I could read some, so I would read what I could of the book. And I loved the art in it. And this is, I believe, John Byrne. And I looked like at I remember the last page of this issue, and Superman is just flying into the air. He finally gets his costume. His parents make his costume and his cape and everything. And he's going, you know, to save the world, you know, as Superman. And I loved that picture in the back of this book. I don't know whatever happened to this book. You know, as long as with many childhood things, it was destroyed or lost somewhere along the way. The Incredible Hulk and Wolverine. This is a reprint of Incredible Hulk number 180 and 181. I remember this. So, you know, this was one of my favorites. This was one that I wanted to search out when I got back into collecting once I remembered it. You know, I remember when this was around 1986 also, and I had, you know, I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I remember just reading over and over this book. And Wolverine was, you know, of course I loved the Hulk. I talked about the TV show and the cartoon. Didn't know Wolverine, didn't really know about him. And I remember when the Marvel Cosmic Universe cards, or Walmart, the Marvel comic cards came out in 1990, 91, and I started buying those. Of course, I didn't know, I knew Captain America, I knew Spider-Man, I knew Iron Man, you know, a little bit because I had some of those Secret Wars figures. So I knew of those, you know, I knew the Hulk. So I started buying up those cards with my allowance. And, you know, you could get them for like 60 cents, 75 cents, so they wasn't expensive. And I remember getting a card of Wolverine, and I remember looking at it, and I was like, this guy looks so familiar to me. And I knew he was one of those X-Men characters. I didn't know the X-Men, but I'd seen them in advertisements or, you know, mail away offers in my other comics that I did have. And I just thought he was so awesome looking, so cool. And I started looking, and I remember they used to have these cards called the MVC, Most Valuable Comics. And one of those cards was a Incredible Hulk 181 card. And I looked at that cover, and I was like, this looks awful familiar, and he's fighting the Hulk. And I read the synopsis on the back of it, and I was thinking, this sounds familiar, because they talk about the Wendigo and everything else. That, you know, he was also involved in this book. And I was thinking, I had this book. And I looked at the date, the year it came out, it was like 1974. I was like, no, there's no way I had this book. I wasn't even born yet. But I kept looking, I was like, yes, I had this book. I was like, did I have the first Prince of Wolverine and not know it? Did I get it in a yard sale or what? Well, come to find out, it was this book that I had, the reprint. But it triggered that memory in me that I could remember that. It's funny how things like that can happen. I completely forgot about it, and then just seeing Wolverine and then seeing that MVC card showing the actual Incredible Hulk 181, it triggered that memory in me. So it's just funny how things like that work out. But anyways, I had this book, loved it. All right, now here's some books. These are books I actually have from my childhood. These are the actual books. And, I don't know if you can tell from the video, but they're pretty worn out. And even this one, the pages are loose inside of it. I read through this book so many times. I would pick a character in this book. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be, I'm going to be the Joker in this book. And I would read all his lines as if I was in the movie when I was a kid. Or I would do Bruce Wayne and Batman. Or I would do, I'd do Alfred's part in the movie. Or I'd do Bob's, something, Bob the Goon. Just something small. And I would just do those, I'd read those parts. Because I'd read this book cover to cover to cover countless numbers of times that the pages are falling out of it. But this is a movie special from the Batman movie. Batman was huge. I mean huge in 1989. To me, he was. I remember getting the magazine special. I would go out and get the little button pins to pin on your shirt. I had the Batman cereal that came with the plastic piggy bank. It was just Batman fever, summer of '89. And I got this book. Of course, I never did see the movie till it came out on VHS, but a friend of my mother's bought it for me for Christmas. And I watched that thing over and over and over and loved that movie. Of course, reading this book spoiled the movie, but as a kid, I didn't care about spoilers. I don't even know if spoilers was actually even a word at that point. It's definitely not in the way it's used today. But this is one I had as a child. And of course, with the Batman fever, so I decided to go out and when I would go to the grocery store, I wanted Batman stuff, and I got a couple of Batman comics to show. I've got several from that time, but I wanted to just show a couple of them that I have. And this is Detective Comics 603. It's just a Batman and the Demon there on the cover. I got spine ticks galore on the side of it. Just nothing really special about it as far as the issue goes. But I believe this is my first Detective Comics book, and it may have been the first Batman book. I don't know if this came out first or this one here, but this was my first Batman issue, Batman Year 3. This is part 2 of 4. I didn't actually get part 1 until last year, but this is one from my childhood. You see spine ticks, outrageous spine ticks on the side of it. But this was the story, the retelling of Robin's origin. Basically, this was, of course, Batman dealing with the loss of Jason Todd in recent times. See, I didn't know that there was another Robin. Robin to me was Dick Grayson, and I didn't know that there was another Robin in the comic books. So I was excited for Robin. I loved Robin, and I hated that there wasn't a Robin at this point. And I remember when Tim Drake came along right around this time, I was so behind him becoming Robin. Of course, Batman was against it, but I really wanted it. Anyways, first Batman book that I had, Batman 437. And a couple of Marvel Comics books that I had. These are actually from my childhood. And this one is probably one of the most rough ones I have. It's spine ticks all over. It's faded. Captain America 353. Supreme Soviets on the cover there. I loved Captain America. Didn't know a ton about him, but I had a Secret Wars figure of him that I just loved. And as a kid, a lot of times colors stand out to you. I think that's what the Superman suit, would do for a lot of kids. It did for me. Just the bright blue and red colors on it. And the same thing for Captain America. I love the colors on his costume. He is still, to this day, one of my favorites costumed superheroes as far as the look of his costume goes. And, of course, I've grown to love the character as well. So this was Captain America number 353. And the last one I'm going to show here, this one I had as a kid, and I was disappointed by this. This was the Amazing Spider-Man 295, Life in the Mad Dog Ward. I remember getting this, for one, I don't know that I bought this or my parents didn't just buy it and give it to me when they went to the grocery store. I hated the black suit Spider-Man. Now, as a teenager, loved the black suit Spider-Man. I was into darker things, cooler stuff. But as a kid, I wanted the red and blue, bright, like I just spoke of as the Captain America, the bright Spider-Man costume, and I wasn't getting it in this book. In fact, in this book, I don't even think Spider-Man is actually in the book. I believe Peter's in it, but we don't get any actual Spider-Man action in this book, if I'm correct. So it was a bit disappointing, but I still have this book to this day, beat all to hell, beat to shit, but I still have it, and I'm glad that I do. Now, about a year or so after this, I started getting more Amazing Spider-Man books and Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, when he had his cosmic powers, and those were a little more fulfilling to me, and I read those constantly, and just loved it. Anyways, guys, this is what I was wanting to show, and you can see as I was able to go back and talk about this stuff from my childhood. I didn't even plan to say a lot of this stuff. It just came to me as I started looking at the books. But just something that I'd love to see everyone else in the community. I'd love to see their videos on this. So I don't want to send out just random tags to different people because I want this to get out there. So if you're watching this video, please, and you do YouTube videos, please do this. I want to watch your videos. I want to learn some things from your childhood, and then once you do one, then start tagging other people or do open tags too. I just think this is a great thing for the community, just to kind of get an origin of us and our story with comics and superheroes. So guys, I appreciate if you took the time to watch this and you're here now. Thank you for getting to this point. Thank you for listening to my stories. And I look forward to seeing anyone that participates in this. I want to give one more shout out to Fred Hall Direct Edition for giving me this idea. And guys, thanks as always.